Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Midway to the District Pod. I am your host, Commando, and I'm fired up to be back. Fired up for this episode today because we are going to be diving into the wide receivers today. This is going to kick off just a mini series. One thing I want to do is kind of get my projections for the different position groups on the channel so I can see and ultimately go back to see how I did and try to improve and just kind of have fun with this. So today we're going to be kicking the series off with wide receivers. So excited to have this conversation. We're going to go into how many receivers I think make this roster, who they are, and ultimately how are they going to produce in 2026. But before we get into all of that, let's hear a word from our sponsor for today's program. Okay, no sponsor. Actually, I'm wrong. There is a sponsor. It's you. So go ahead and hit that like button. But more importantly, I'd love if you left a comment. If you find this episode entertaining, maybe you want to put some of your projections or comment on if I have a wild take with someone way too high or way too low with their yardage. Feel free to leave a comment, kind of stamp mark your own opinions. You can do that through this channel, which is just kind of fun to look back to see before you make fun of me for my wild takes or whatnot. Maybe leave something of your own that we can make fun of right back. So, but anyways, before we jump in to the wide receivers, I do want to just talk about a few things. Just a couple quick reactions I have to week one of the preseason, a few other notes, and then we'll jump right in to the wide receiver conversation that I'm excited to have. Also, if you have a specific position group you want me to predict, feel free to leave that in the comments as well. Just my rough plan right now is to maybe go into the running backs and tight ends next. Do maybe a combined episode for those two, and then get to our superstar quarterback, Jaden Daniels, go over his passing yards, completion percentage, touchdowns, interceptions, fun stuff like that. Can't wait for that, of course. But to get there, we got to talk about wide receivers, which is always one of the most fun positions to talk about anyways. But let's talk about week one. Just a few takeaways I had from watching the game. One of the probably the biggest takeaways that I had was who played and who didn't play. I thought it was extremely notable that Jeremy Reeves was a healthy scratch for that game, which speaks volumes to him being a starter on our team. The fact that they didn't even play him, definitely a concern of mine. In fact, the entire secondary is a big concern of mine. Also tied in with Jeremy not playing was Mikey not playing. So Mikey has been looking pretty poor in camp so far by a lot of videos and what people are saying there. And so really Mikey is kind of an in-between type guy who isn't quite quick enough to play the inside, isn't quite tall enough to play the outside, but he does read quarterbacks really well. He's more of a zone cornerback, which should fit with Durante Jones' scheme. And he's an eye on the quarterback, and he's had a bunch of interceptions, more than other people on our team in the past. But reports from camp is he keeps dropping interceptions right and left. Like, that's supposed to be his superpower. So that's definitely a concern. So Reeves being left off of preseason action, which, I mean, how long has Reeves? Shout out to Reeves, one of my favorite players on the team. So I definitely don't want to talk negatively about him. But that being said, he's never really had starter minutes, and now he's not even playing in a preseason game. That's wild. And then Mikey not playing as well. I'm not sure if that has more to do with Trey being hurt still, but he concerns me. These people who slid in the draft, like Trey Amos and Johnny Newton, because of injuries, and now they're just getting injured constantly. Maybe not the best drafting strategy, but that's another conversation for another day. I thought that was very notable that both of them were scratches for preseason game one. I like to talk a little bit about Sonny Styles. He only got one drive in the game, which I thought was a mistake by DQ. Like, he's a rookie. He hasn't proven anything yet. Like, why did you only leave him in for one drive? I've watched that drive multiple times, and wasn't necessarily impressed. I do have concerns with Sunny Styles. I don't want to like overrate it. It is just one series and whatnot, and there's other factors that go into it. I also have preconceived notions. We know that linebacker is one of the toughest positions to translate from college to NFL. So Sonny kind of has that working against him. He also isn't a natural linebacker for his entire career. He only played it for 2 years at Ohio State, and he did show incredible development and growth through that 2 years. But going from there to the big leagues is a massive jump as well. So I do have concerns, and then watching him on in that one series, it looked to me like he didn't run into the right gaps at times. The running back went through, he was getting blocked, and yeah, it's I think ultimately he's going to be a really good player, but I do think it's going to take some growth. I don't think we're going to necessarily see him jump off the bat. I think we were all so excited to get more athletic from Bobby Wagner, but Bobby Wagner was so good at stopping the run, plugging those gaps, staying square. Shout out to DQ, and making tackles, and I just wonder how Sonny Styles is going to be able to do those things. I think pass coverage, he's going to be fantastic in that, but I do have concerns. Now that being said, the defensive line was not good. Johnny Newton was getting driven back like crazy, and so you would hope with a better defensive line that Deron Payne and Javon Kinlaw and Tim Settle and them would create cleaner lanes for Sonny to run through and whatnot. But I do have concerns. I really think that Caleb Downs is going to go crazy. There's a lot, on socials about him like locking up CD and different things, and I think that he is going to do really good. I'm a buyer, and I think he's going to have a big impact. And we see the Cowboys in week 2, so if Caleb Downs gets an interception and Sonny's struggling, I think there's going to be a lot of angst in the fan base. Stay patient with Sonny. I'm going to stay patient with him. I do think ultimately he might be a more important piece. If he can develop into the Fred Warner type for the defense, being in the middle there, which I fully expect him to be, say by year 3, maybe year 2, but probably year 3. I'm expecting Fred Warner production. If I don't get that, we've got problems. We got problems. He's the 7th overall pick, and he's the Megatron of defenses, physical freak. So he should be held to that standard, and that's what I'm going to hold him to. But he's not going to be that year 1, so I'm just warning you right now. Put those pitchforks away, because I could see him starting a little bit slower on our team. Anyhow, enough about Sonny Styles. Other things, the O-line, I thought Brandon Coleman looked really good. And I think it's going to be an average at best unit. I think if we achieve average, which I do think we can achieve average, by the way, even though we're ranked like dead last according to PFF, I think the unit can gel and just be an average group. But yeah, like Chris Paul as well. He was getting driven back on a play. He's known for being a better pass blocker than a run blocker, and that does worry me as well. Just getting that much less athletic by him having to start. Our depth has been depleted. Laramie Tunsil injury was massive. That hurt. Laramie Tunsil is a force multiplier. And we're actually going to talk about how he impacts the wide receiver position on this conversation today, because I think he does have a big impact on one wide receiver in particular, and probably many wide receivers losing him. We haven't heard any news back, and no news, in my opinion, is good news. Like if we hear news from him, it's probably he's going to be out for the season. Um, but if we don't hear news from him, that's a good thing. And I think that means the longer we don't hear news, the better it is about him potentially coming back in like week 12 or week 13. I really hope and pray he comes back, because I do think our line can hold it down. If they stay healthy, I think they can hold it down till he goes back. And if Laramie Tunsil were to come back, say week 12 or week 13, I think that would have a massive impact on the type of calls David Blau can call, the confidence, being able to put Bates on maybe Josh Connerly's side to help him and just have one side secure. I think it makes a massive difference. I can't understate how important that injury was. What a dagger to us. But those are just some thoughts I had about the offensive line. And then the running backs, they were the standout. I wasn't like super impressed by Fat Man, to be honest. I know he said himself that he was hesitant, especially in the beginning. And then once Robert Henry got going, that kind of freed him up and he started playing better, which he did. But he just, man, just after going, watching Brian Robinson for so many years, and I like Brian Robinson. I'm not trying to be a hater or anything like that, but just not having that explosion is just a turn off for me. One sec. And so Fat Man to me wasn't that impressive. I know that he will make the team, and I think the team's fine with him. Overall, if he carves out a role, it's going to be that like goal line role. And probably selfishly for me, for fantasy, I don't want him to have that. I can't lie, but I don't know, like not impressed by Fat Man, I'll just be honest. And Robert Henry was definitely impressive, much more impressive. I think I'm probably gonna have him making the team now, especially because Jeremy McNichols is probably going to miss all of preseason. I don't think McNichols is going to make it. I think Robert Henry is going to take his spot. So he played great. I love that little hezzy that he had behind the line and then sprinted out the right side for that touchdown. He was running between the tackles as well, and his pass pro was good as well. And they're clearly, the team is trying to get him on the team because they're putting him at punt return, they're putting him at kickoff return. When you see that, they're trying to give themselves an excuse to put someone like that on the team. And so I do think he might actually make it, which is not something I would have said a couple weeks ago. Kaliak Manis, Kaliak Patty Whack, he looked pretty good. He had his arm strength. It was just like, it reminded me of drinking a cold Heine after Heineke would make some baller play. It was refreshing for him to be in the game after Sam Hartman finally got pulled. Like, DQ, what are you doing? Why? First off, Mariota, come on, man. I'm so ready. I've been ready for years to save $8 million on the cap and not sign Marcus Mariota, but this dude gets hurt every single time. And if you're the backup quarterback and you get hurt, what good are you? Of course he gets hurt on his like first drive. So annoying. And then we have to suffer through Sam Hartman all the way until after the first series in the second half. Like, the receivers are all dead in the water because Sam Hartman is that booty. But then Kaliak came in and was throwing some darts, hit Antonio Williams, hit a few other people, Jacoby Jones, and he was looking pretty good. Dude might not be able to move, but he might be able to sling it a little bit. So that was fun. Anyhow, those are some notes I had from preseason game 1. It looks like we might not get the starters in week 2 against Detroit. Detroit already, they generally do not play their starters in the preseason game. And we just had some injuries start to mount up. Oway is hurt. Chason is hurt. Jordan McGee. DQ said quite a few people are hurt now, and I think they're kind of getting scared, to be honest. And so I think DQ is going to go in a shell, and he's not going to play his starters, which really stinks. First time OC, like, this line is shuffling right and left, like, man, Jaden hardly played last year. I want to see him get a series in, or two series. I want to see him play a little bit. But I don't think we're going to get that, which really kind of stinks. It's going to stink having those question marks going into the year, because they're not going to play week 3. So if we don't see Jaden at all, then we're going to have a bad taste in our mouth. So anyhow, that kind of sucks. But other quick notes, and then we'll jump right into the wide receiver conversation. Is Drew Stevens won the kicking job, which this also makes me scared. I don't trust Drew Stevens as much of the fan base has wanted him to win, because he's got such a strong leg. He was extremely inconsistent in Iowa. I know he's done well in camp, and I'll be rooting like heck for the kid, but I just don't trust him. I could definitely see him costing us a game or two, but hopefully I didn't just speak that into existence. Johnny Newton is now seeing a specialist on his pec. He's probably going to be out for the year. Well, I shouldn't say he'll be out for the year. We don't know what it is, but he's probably going to be out for a long time. I would suspect probably the year. And that probably does signify the end of Johnny Newton as a Commander. He does still have one more year, but I said in one of the first videos of this channel that I wanted us to trade Johnny Newton, and I was really hopeful that we could still trade him. I don't think he fits in Durante Jones' scheme anyways, because we run more of a 3-4, and so I think you want bigger linemen, not undersized. Like, he fit more of the Dan Quinn defensive scheme, where they would want them to be aggressive and shoot up, but I don't think he fits Durante Jones anyways. So I was hopeful we could trade this dude and maybe get like a 5th back for him. Maybe someone saw some value in him, but man, that stinks. Like, he was a number 36 overall pick. I had high hopes for him. I remember vividly when we had 36 and 40 in 2024 after the first round pick. I wanted Johnny Newton and I wanted Cooper DeJean so badly for those 2 picks. We ended up getting Johnny, and we ended up having the chance to get Cooper DeJean, but we traded with the Eagles, who drafted him at 40. That didn't work out. So no one's a higher praise of AP than me. I don't think you'll find anyone, but this one stings. Now, that being said, like the Stock Exchange podcast with Connor and Trevor, Connor Rogers and Trevor Sikkema, like, I'm pretty sure, I think it was Connor Rogers had him as like debatably one of the best defensive prospects in that draft, and rated him like around like 10 and 11. And so it's not like it was unfounded for Johnny Newton, but injuries, lack of strength and whatnot, and now more injuries might just doom his career as a Commander. That stinks. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it for the notes that I wanted to kind of catch up. Been a little bit since I've shot a pod, and so I've been thinking about it. I've been studying and whatnot, but now's the perfect time to start releasing some of these videos as we get into my projections. So let's do just that, and let's start looking into who I believe is going to make the team and what they're ultimately going to do for the Commanders in 2026. So I've got 7 wide receivers making this roster. I've got Stephon Diggs, Terry McLaurin, Antonio Williams, De'Ami Brown, Luke McCaffrey, Treylon Burks, and Jalen Lane. I did put in Van Jefferson there as a bonus, because when I was, and I'll keep this part short, but when I was doing my study and I was looking into what these receivers did last season and what their career averages are, Van Jefferson is like easily the third most productive receiver. I think productive is probably the right word for him that we have on our roster. He had 350 yards last year. I think he had a season where he had close to 900 yards with the Rams a few, 4 years ago or some. Don't quote me on that. But his career average is 371 yards per season with 27.6 receptions. I mean, that's pretty significant increase when you compare that to Jalen Lane, Traylon Burks, Luke McCaffrey, and De'Ami Brown. And Antonio Williams is a rookie as well. We also saw last year how devastating it was when we didn't have Terry, when Noah was hurt, to not have the production in the room outside of them. So, kind of the horrors of last year, I think actually playing to Van Jefferson's pocket for him to potentially make the team. I know most of our fan base has written him off, but I'm not going to write him off. Do I have him on our roster? I do not. Now, I've always kind of viewed Van Jefferson as in a battle with De'Ami Brown specifically. We've got Terry as our deep threat, and then we've got De'Ami and Van Jefferson as our two other deep threats. They kind of serve very similar purposes. I think this team likes De'Ami Brown. They like what he can do on specials. They also like that he is one heck of a blocker, where I don't think Van Jefferson is as much of a blocker or specials as well. So I am giving the nod to De'Ami Brown, making it over him, but do not be shocked if Van Jefferson makes this team. It would not shock me in the least, and now it shouldn't shock you either. I will say Van Jefferson is definitely a more complete receiver than De'Ami Brown is, never has been as well. So that's just a side nugget on Van Jefferson. But I do have us having 7 wide receivers making the team here. So it's typically either 6 or 7 is a stretch. Well, in our case, because the Jalen Lane is pretty solely a punt returner, he's a wide receiver, but his main job is a punt return. And then Luke McCaffrey is most likely going to be our kickoff return. And he's had a really great camp as well. I think they probably like his versatility playing in the slot or outside. Yeah, I think he's done nothing but everything he's been asked for. And so I could have seen a much bigger role for Luke had Stephon Diggs not been here, had Antonio Williams not been here. So I do see, because we've got like more of like a kick returner and a punt return specialist, I think because of that causes us to ultimately keep 7 wide receivers on the roster, not 6. With Van Jefferson just missing out, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. One thing you'll notice is I do have Stephon Diggs as the number 1 receiver in 2026. Now, do I think he's like the number 1? Is he the 2, or is Terry? Terry's our 1 for sure. But I do actually project Stephon Diggs to have more receptions and more yardage. So this is probably the boldest projection that I have here, but I'd love to hear what you think. If you think I'm way too optimistic on Stephon Diggs. Ever since he's come to the Commanders, people are just raving. They're raving that he's in shape. His ability, he's just making plays in practice. He's going to have the ability to sit in zones. And I think Jaden's just going to absolutely fall in love with Steph Diggs because people are probably going to play a lot of zone against us with Jaden Daniels. You don't necessarily want your secondary turning their back and running with people when you got someone as electric as 5 under center and can run himself. So I do think there's going to be a lot of zone against us, and I think Steph Diggs is an absolute pro in finding zones, finding the soft spaces, and I think he's going to feast. I know I've talked on this podcast about injuries and how I'm not super optimistic on people coming back from injuries year one, but then that second year after it, they typically end up even getting back to form, if not even better. And that's what we have with Steph Diggs. He was coming off the major injury last year with the Patriots, and they eased him into the season. And he still ended up getting 85 receptions for 1,013 yards and 4 touchdowns. And so this year, I expect him to take an even bigger step, and this is a much bigger step. I get that. 97 receptions, 1,164 yards. Like, this would be an incredible year, for sure. But that's what I'm projecting out of him. When I did these projections, I did more analysis than what you're seeing on your screen. I looked into like yards per catch, and then I also did a lot of comparison with the 2024 Detroit Lions, because I do believe that David Blau is going to implement a similar style offense to what the Lions are running. I think we kind of see that with them going under center more. All the reports that we have from camp with all the motion usage, even putting like Ben Sinnott in at fullback, and then just the personnel that we invested in, and all of it kind of lines up, and it makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense to me, that he's going to be implementing that style of offense. And I think that Steph Diggs has the opportunity to play in the Amon-Ra St. Brown role, which is kind of what we were thinking Antonio Williams might do. With Steph Diggs, I think that goes to him. And if we pull up the stats for the 2024 Lions, if I can get this to load. Here we go. Amon-Ra St. Brown in, I'm not sure if you guys can see that or not, but Amon-Ra St. Brown in 2024 had 115 receptions for 1,263 yards and 12 touchdowns. And so while these numbers do look really good, and of course Amon-Ra St. Brown is much younger than Steph Diggs, it's not like Steph Diggs hasn't put up much bigger seasons than what I'm showing in front of you. If he takes that Amon-Ra St. Brown role, I mean, even those stats in front of you are about 100 yards less and 18 catches less, and 5 touchdowns less. So in that kind of vein, I just think he's gonna really thrive. Now, I was initially going to have Terry McLaurin with more yards than Steph Diggs, but this gets back to the Laramie Tunsil injury. I think that drastically hurts Terry McLaurin because David Blau is not going to have as much confidence to call those deep shots that Terry thrives on. And I think there's going to be a heavier emphasis on shorter, quick routes, intermediate routes. These are the routes that Steph Diggs really thrives on. And so I actually, because of the Laramie Tunsil injury, I have Steph Diggs as our number one producer this year. And that's how big that injury, I think, has an impact on us. And so yeah, that's that would beat his career average, and that would just be a heck of a fine. It came out that he only signed for, what was it, 8 million or so, and then it's like up to whatever, 10 or so with incentives, 11 or so. So anyhow, that's what I got for Steph Diggs. Terry McLaurin, that's a very Terry McLaurin like year. 71 receptions, actually spot on with his average receptions per year. It kind of hurt my soul a little bit, putting 994 yards per season on an average for Terry McLaurin under 1,000. We know that last year that 582 that dropped that number significantly. But I do see him getting back to 1,000 plus. All reports is that Terry and Stefon Diggs are just in tremendous shape, and they're doing just a great job. It seems like they're kind of hanging around each other a lot too. Um, so I'm really excited about this 1-2 punch. For the Lions in 2024, they had Amara, who I said had 1263, and then Jamison Williams had 1,001 yards. So they had two 1,000-yard receivers. I think that the 2026 Commanders are going to have two 1,000-yard receivers. I think that Jameson is, younger. He's faster, even though Terry's super fast as well. But I do think that Terry is overall a better receiver, better route runner, more physical and tough than Jameson Williams. And so I think he'll outproduce him a little bit. And then number three. So I've got Antonio Williams here, and of course, he's a rookie. So these stats that I have are from his days in Clemson. One thing that worries me about Antonio Williams is he played 4 years at Clemson, and two of them he was fully healthy, and then two of them he wasn't. He played maybe like half of the season. So I am nervous with him with like soft tissue injuries and things of that nature. I think the talent is definitely there. Like the fan base is over the moon about Antonio Williams, and I think he eventually will be that. But I do think we need to pump the brakes on year one with Antonio Williams. He's another person that I think the Laramie Tunsil injury impacts dramatically. David Blau is just with Brandon Coleman at left tackle and Connerly at right tackle. Like he can't have that much confidence in our offensive line with 7-step, dropbacks, play action fakes, and things of that nature. Like, are they both going to hold up? Does he need a help? Put John Bates on one side to help. Which side is it? There's just so much uncertainty without LT that I think it's going to reduce the 11 personnel with three tight end sets dramatically. I think our best type of offense is going to be more of like the two tight ends, 12 personnel, and two receivers, having Steph and Terry out there. And so I think that Tunsil injury also very negatively impacts Antonio Williams. Of course, Stefon Diggs impacts him hugely as well. He was probably going to eventually develop into his role, and now if Steph's there, you gotta wait till next year, buddy. I'm sorry. I do really like him as a prospect. I love his route running. I love his quickness. I love. There's John Keim interview with Dabo Sweeney that I think is really good, where Dabo talks very thoroughly about Antonio Williams and how he's just as good a wide receiver prospect as any of the other Clemson's products like T. Higgins or Hopkins, Sammy Watkins, people like that, and how he learned and all this type of things. I think gets you really excited about Antonio Williams, and we should be, but he is a rookie. And I think the fan base is a little bit way too optimistic about his production in year one. I mean, you just look at Luke and you look at Jalen Lane and their production in year one, and like even 370 yards, that is significantly more than theirs. Now, I do think he's a much better prospect than the both of those people. He's much more refined as a wide receiver, and so I am much more of a believer in him. That being said, though, I've got 37 receptions for 370 yards and 3 touchdowns. I feel like that's fair, and I feel like I'm not putting some kind of number that I'm going to regret at the end of the year and think, oh, what was I thinking? I bought into the hype too much. I think that's probably sufficient. Then from there, I've got De'Ami Brown, Luke McCaffrey, Traylon Burks, and Jalen Lane. As I was going through this assignment, I was looking at the 2024 Lions, and we already went over Amara, their number one receiver, which I have compared to Steph at 1263. I've got Jamison Williams at 1001, which compares to Terry McLaurin, at least as far as their roles go. And then the third receiver they had was Tim Patrick, who only had 394 yards. And so the fourth receiver, Khalif Raymond, had 215 yards. And so, like, really, it was heavily focused on the first two receivers. And then, of course, like Jahmyr Gibbs, which we don't have, and Sam Laporta. And so, but then it kind of fell off of a cliff. So I kind of see a similar type thing, especially again without Laramie Tunsil. We're gonna really see most of the passing game focused around Steph Diggs, Terry McLaurin, and Chigakonkwo, is what I see, and then I see not many contributors after that. We'll see. I've got De'Ami Brown here. I think it could easily be Traylon Burks. I think Traylon Burks could even be on that 3 spot. It's hard to predict him because he's basically the same as Noah Brown to me. I can't count on him. When I was doing my research, I think he averages like a little over 8 games a season over 4 seasons, and I just can't with that. Like, I've got that PTSD with him. However, like, he is the first one up in 3 receiver sets alongside Stephon and Terry. I think his minutes and routes will be reduced, which may, if I'm being optimistic, keep him healthier here on the Commanders as well. So I don't have him as 4 just because of the health factor, and I can't trust him. So I have De'Ami Brown there. But I could easily, if he is able to stay healthy, I could see Traylon Burks being the 3rd highest receiver that the Commanders have in 2026. So this is the breakdown that I have. Again, I'd like to kind of go into tight ends and running backs, and then once I kind of have their statistics, that's going to help round me out for Jaden Daniels statistics that I have. So we're going to keep rolling with these videos about projections. I want to get them in before the season starts so I can have something concrete going into the year. And then, of course, once we wrap that up, I'm excited to get into the record predictions as well. I'll definitely go into the predictions for everyone in the NFC East. I'd like to also predict the Bears as well, and the NFC North division as well, because I just want to keep track of that stuff. It's fun for me. I like doing it, but I'm excited to shoot those off. So my goal on the channel is to get these projections out and then get the team total projections out before the year, and then cheers and toast to it, and then just enjoy watching our superstar quarterback shut everyone up, because I see things out there. I see these publications. I see that they forgot about us. They forgot about 5, and I can't wait for him to remind everyone exactly who he is. And I'm fired up for this year. We got just a couple more preseason games to go, and then we'll get started with the real action. Well, this has been a blast. It's been a blast studying this and going over my wide receiver projections with you. Again, if you're still here, first off, thanks so much. We're about 40 minutes into this episode, and if you are listening at that, that speaks volumes, and so I appreciate you. If you don't mind, hit the like button. But even more than that, if you would like to engage and leave a comment, that would be the fun for me, where we could kind of talk about your projections, what you think about mine, and whatnot, and so I'd love to hear from you. So this has been a blast. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Midway to the District pod. Take care.